Now let's look and keep on going down the body. We've got just a couple of more muscles to do. I know this has been a whirlwind tour for you. We've got the gastrocnemius. Now the origins are going to be the medial and lateral aspects of the femur. So really our medial and lateral distal epicondyles. And it inserts into the calcaneal tuberosity via the Achilles. Now the functions are plantar flexions and knee flexion. Now let's look here, and we start here at the origin, and we see we're up above the condyles. We're up in the epicondyle region, both medial and lateral. Insertion, we see this white part is the common Achilles tendon, and it inserts down here into this blue thing called the calcaneal tuberosity. Now plantar flexion is easy. Everybody knows whenever we flex our point our toes, we can feel our calf muscle turn on and that gastrocnemius lighting up. And this is a fine and fantastic thing, and it's absolutely true. Okay? But now if we look and we realize origin and insertion, we see that the gastrocnemius actually crosses the knee. Its line of pull will allow the gastrocnemius to actually flex the shin back up towards the femur. And this is how it causes knee flexion. Now, the line of pull is not optimal for this, but they can do it. It can help with that. Now, this is important to know because if somebody has got some major hamstring injury, maybe they have had a complete avulsion, they can still walk, they can still bend their knee. Why? Well, the gastrocnemius is still intact. So essentially, you can operate without having hamstrings. Now, I'm not saying you can operate efficiently, but you can operate without having hamstrings because of the flexor ability of the gastrocnemius. In fact, rumor has it that in feudal England, that people, whenever the serfs would try to escape, that they would cut off the back of the tendons of the hamstring at the back of the knee, and the people could still work. The serfs could still work. Why? Because the gastrocnemius also functioned as a knee flexor. And that's all they needed. They wanted them to not be able to run fast, but still work. And that's how they got the most out of their investment. Now, function in sport, propel the body when the femur is at full extension and beyond. By femur at full extension, I'm talking about our hip joint. And we'll see this here in a minute with the kinogram that we have stolen from Altus. And we'll see how it can propel the body when the femur is at full extension and beyond, because it is impossible for the femur to continue with that extension. Whenever the extension goes beyond vertical, we get into hyperextension, and the only way that hyperextension can occur is with a lumbar extension. And we've all seen athletes who've got this, the low back kind of looks like it goes forward and backward if somebody's running. Well, that's a sign of an unstable pelvis, and that they're trying to drive too much with the hamstrings and not enough with the ankles. Now, exercises. What develops the gastrocnemius? Of course, just a standard calf raise, donkey calf raise, any sort of calf raise, excluding seated, is the way that'll really hit that. Why? Because I want the joint to be out at full extension, so I am maximizing my range of motion. Now, the soleus. We think of the calves as just a collective group, but they're actually separate muscles, and their functions are slightly different. Now, the origin is on the lateral tibia and fibular head for the soleus, and it inserts again to the calcaneus via the common Achilles tendon. Now, actions. It depends on what happens with the foot. If the heel lifts up, then the force is going to be recognized and derived as plantar flexion. If the heel stays in place, so the heel doesn't lift up, the heel stays in place, we're working more posterior tibial translation. Now, how does that work? Well, we look at the origin down here and the insertion of the muscle. This is typically the origin, this is the insertion, but if the heel's not moving, this becomes the origin and this becomes the insertion. So while this doesn't cross the knee joint, it acts just below it, and if I pull this insertion towards this origin, that means that I'm going to be shifting the tibia back, and that allows the tibia to be a additional posterior translator, or it's sometimes referred to as an ACL agonist, meaning that it's not something that hurts the ACL. It's actually something that will help prevent further injury because it's going to assist the ACL with the prevention of anterior translation, so it'll keep it back more and keep the ACL from having to get damaged. Now, the only exercise that I've ever found that really hits the soleus well is the seated calf raise. I think this is probably one of the most overlooked exercises that are out there because of the impacts that the ankle joint and the calves and the soleus specifically can have not only on performance but also on injury. Now let's break things down in sport and let's try and tie everything back together. We see toe off. Toe off means that the foot has left the ground. We go up into the drive phase. Okay. We've got the mid propulsive phase. So we're mid-flight propulsive right here. So no feet are on the ground. I move in towards the foot strike. I start accelerating the femur back to the ground. Tighten up to be ready for touchdown. From touchdown, I go into full support, which means all of my load is on that one leg slightly. And then I start over again. Well, what does that mean for the posterior chain? Well, at toe off, our contralateral quadratus lumborum is stabilizing the pelvis. Glute max and hip extensor are still on, but they're preparing to shut off because they are moving behind the body due to momentum. And the gastroc and soleus are in maximal concentric contraction, trying to provide propulsive forces for the body to go down the field. Now we can see that as we reach this full support phase, there's not much more that the hip extension is going to provide. And once we hit that point, everything then shifts down to the ankle flexors because they have got plantar flexors, because they have got a better line of pull to cause propulsive force. During that mid-flight phase, the hamstrings and the knee flexors are firing eccentrically to prevent the knee extension. So the femur is driving back up, and the hamstring should be turning on to prevent that shank, that tibia, from going too far forward. Now, as you strike the ground, of course the contralateral quadratus lumborum is going to be turning on to stabilize the pelvis. The glutes and hip extensor of the hamstrings are firing. You're driving down to the ground, you're driving down fast, you're trying to accelerate to cause more force to go into propulsive forces. At touchdown, which is whenever the foot has made contact with the ground, again the contralateral quadratus lumborum is stabilizing the pelvis, as are the hip abductors to make sure that you're firing in line. The glute and hip extensor hamstrings are firing, and the gastrocnemius and the soleus are loaded up, and they are ready for an eccentric contraction to prepare for the subsequent toe off. When we go into full support, the contralateral quadratus lumborum is stabilizing the pelvis with the hip abductors. The glute and hip extensors are firing, and the gastroc and soleus are in isometric or amortization as they are moving forward into that concentric contraction, into that concentric propulsive force of the hip to allow you to be propelled down the track. Now, if we look at change of direction, okay, with the change of direction, we see that there is a triple folding going on. The hips, the knees, and the ankles are all going to be taking on motion. We see the person in the back actually has got an excessive hip. I'm not sure if they are going into a starting stance or if that person just has that much of an issue with their hip and it's making them lean over or not. Now, during the descent, there's going to be some knee flexor activity, especially if it's rapid, if they're dropping to change direction. Now, this is going to be important if there is the knee flexor activity, if it's rapid, because you're going to have an isometric portion, which is going to turn on and prevent that tibia from moving forward. So we don't want that tibia to move forward. Actually, we don't want it to move backwards either. We want it to stay just in place because that indicates that our ligaments are still good. In this isometric position, the soleus turns on to prevent that tibia from moving forward, from rocking forward. So it is preventing it from getting into a bad position, just like the hamstring muscles. Okay, so this is just one more additional muscle that is going to be helping out with that. Whenever we go into reacceleration, after we make the change of direction, guys, then you're going right back to sprint mechanics. Now, in conclusion, I recommend using the SAID principle. What do I mean by that? We have specific adaptations to impose demands. We see that every muscle has a different function. And if there's one function that they're weak in, train that function. So find out what the issue is and train it. Now, I also hope in parting that you're understanding more about anatomy and kinesiology of the posterior chain, how it works, and hopefully took some of the magic and mysticism out of it. I want to bring up these references here for those of you who care about that sort of thing. Visible Body is an app that I use to teach anatomy off of, and if you're very weak in anatomy and there's somewhere that you want to get stronger, Visible Body is an excellent app for that doesn't require being connected to the internet. So thank you guys for your time, and please take the quiz so you can get your continuing education units.